Rachel always believed her life was steady and safe. She had been with Evan for almost 9 years, and they built what she thought was a peaceful and loving marriage. They lived in a quiet neighborhood, shared a small morning routine, and spent weekends visiting new coffee shops. Her best friend Lily had been in her life even longer. They met in college, survived heartbreaks together, and supported each other through new jobs, moves, and every struggle that came their way. Rachel never imagined that the two people she trusted most would be the ones to destroy her life in the most painful way. One afternoon, Rachel was at work when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but the voice on the other end sounded urgent. A woman explained she had found Rachel's name listed as an emergency contact on a school form. She asked if Rachel could come pick up a child named Mason, because his parents weren't answering their phones. Rachel froze. She didn't know any Mason, and certainly wasn't anyone's emergency contact except her niece. She thought maybe it was a mistake, but something in her chest tightened. She decided to go, thinking she could clear it up quickly. When she arrived at the school office, a small boy with curly brown hair sat quietly with a backpack too big for his shoulders. He looked up at her with wide eyes, almost hopeful. Before she could explain that there had been a misunderstanding, he smiled and said, "Daddy said you would come." Rachel felt her stomach twist so sharply she had to grab the back of the chair beside her. She told the staff she needed a moment and stepped outside, trying to breathe. She called Evan, but he didn't pick up. She called Lily too, but her call went straight to voicemail. The school gave Rachel the address listed for the child's home, so she could take him there. She drove with shaking hands. When she reached the townhouse, she knocked on the door with her heart beating uncontrollably. The moment it opened, her entire world cracked. Lily stood in the doorway, surprised and pale. Before Rachel could speak, Evan appeared behind her, holding a baby monitor and looking like he'd seen a ghost. It didn't take words to understand. The child, the address, the silence, the panic on both their faces. Every piece of it made the truth louder than any explanation could. Rachel felt something inside her collapse, a mix of betrayal and disbelief so powerful she could barely move. She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't ask why. She simply walked back to her car because she knew if she stayed even 1 second longer, she would break completely. Driving away, she felt like she was leaving behind a life that had never really existed. Every memory suddenly felt fake. Every smile from Evan and Lily felt like a carefully placed cover to hide their secret. Rachel didn't know what her next step would be, but one thing was clear. Her trust had been destroyed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Rachel didn't notice the changes all at once. They crept in slowly, almost quietly, the way small cracks appear in a wall before anyone realizes the whole structure is weakening. It started with Evan coming home later than usual. At first, he blamed meetings, last-minute reports, or heavy traffic. She believed him because he had never given her a reason not to. But the excuses grew more frequent, and the explanations became shorter. Sometimes he didn't bother explaining at all. He would just say he was tired and go straight to bed. His phone, which used to sit openly on the counter or coffee table, became something he kept close. He adjusted the settings so notifications didn't show on the screen. If Rachel walked by while he was texting, he turned slightly, as if blocking her view. When she asked harmless questions, "Rough day?" or "Everything okay?" he gave vague answers or brushed her off entirely. She tried to convince herself that he was stressed, maybe going through something at work. But the quiet distance between them kept spreading until it felt like the two of them lived side by side instead of together. At the same time, things with Lily began to change too. Lily had always been the type to show up without warning, bringing iced coffee or talking nonstop about her day. But suddenly she was harder to reach. She canceled plans with strange excuses, saying she wasn't feeling well or had errands she couldn't postpone. Whenever they did meet, Lily seemed tense, distracted, and quick to end conversations. She fidgeted more, glanced at her phone often, and avoided direct eye contact whenever Rachel mentioned Evan. It felt odd, but Rachel didn't want to jump to conclusions. Lily had her own life, her own stress, and she trusted her completely. Still, things kept stacking up. One night, Rachel woke up and found the other side of the bed cold. Evan wasn't home. When he arrived nearly an hour later, he smelled of someone else's perfume, light, sweet, unfamiliar. When she asked where he had been, he said he had trouble sleeping and went for a drive. His voice was calm, almost too calm, making her feel silly for even questioning it. She didn't push further because she didn't want to seem paranoid. Even small things stood out. Evan no longer made weekend plans like he used to. He stopped asking about her day. He avoided family dinners. Lily started giving one-word answers through text. She acted like she was always in a hurry, like she couldn't sit with Rachel long enough without becoming visibly uncomfortable. Rachel told herself these were just coincidences. People changed, friendships shifted, work got stressful. She reminded herself that she wasn't the kind of person who imagined problems where there were none. But late at night, when the house was quiet and her thoughts were louder than she wanted them to be, she felt something stirring inside her, an uneasiness she couldn't explain. She pushed the feeling away each time, trying to trust the people she loved the most. She had no idea that all these small signs were pieces of a truth she wasn't ready to face, one that would soon break her world apart. Rachel wasn't planning to be anywhere near that part of town. She had only taken a different route because the main road was closed for construction. She wanted to pick up a few groceries and stop by the pharmacy before heading home. Her mind was on her list, not on Evan, not on anything unusual. But as she pulled into a quiet neighborhood, something familiar caught her eye. A silver SUV parked beside a small townhouse. It was the exact same model, same dent on the back bumper, same faded parking sticker on the windshield. It was Evan's car. For a moment, she sat still, thinking maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. But the longer she looked, the more certain she became. She told herself there had to be a harmless reason. Maybe Evan was picking up something from a coworker or helping someone with a favor. She tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. That uneasy feeling returned, spreading slowly through her chest. Rachel parked her car a little farther down the street and walked toward the townhouse. Her hands felt cold, but she kept telling herself not to overthink. People had lives outside the home. People ran errands. People did things without announcing every step. She reached the front door and knocked lightly at first, then a bit louder when no one answered. She expected Evan to open the door, maybe surprised, maybe even annoyed, but ready with some explanation that would quiet the doubts circling in her mind. Instead, after a few seconds, the door creaked open and a small boy stood there. He looked around 4 or 5 years old, with messy hair and bright, curious eyes. He stared at her for a moment, then smiled like he recognized her. Before Rachel could say a single word, the boy said, "Daddy's not here right now. Are you waiting for him?" His voice was small, innocent, and completely unaware of the impact those words had on her. The word daddy hit her with a force she didn't expect. Her breath caught in her throat. She tried to form a question, something simple like, "Who's your daddy?" But her voice wouldn't come out. While she tried to process what she heard, the boy stepped back a little and pointed toward the living room. Children's toys were scattered on the floor, and a framed photo sat on a small table. From where she stood, Rachel could see Evan in that picture, smiling with the same little boy beside him. It felt like the air left her lungs all at once. She reached for the doorframe just to steady herself. The boy kept talking, saying something about waiting for his dad to come back from the store, but Rachel barely heard him. Every sound around her felt muffled, like she was standing underwater. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of something that clearly made no sense at all. She didn't step inside. She didn't ask more questions. She simply murmured that she would come back later, then walked away as calmly as she could. But inside, she felt something breaking apart, quietly, painfully, piece by piece, as she returned to her car with a truth she wasn't ready to understand. Rachel didn't want to return to the townhouse, but something inside her pushed her back. She couldn't shake the image of Evan in that framed photo or the way the little boy had spoken so casually, as if Evan belonged in that home. She needed to see for herself, even if it meant facing something she wasn't ready for. Her legs felt heavy as she walked up the steps again, but she forced herself to knock. This time she heard movement inside, quick footsteps, a soft whisper, then silence. When the door opened, it wasn't the child she saw. It was Lily. For a moment, Rachel couldn't speak at all. Lily's face went completely pale, her eyes wide with shock. She looked like someone caught in the middle of a crime they never expected to get exposed. And then Rachel noticed something else. Lily's loose sweater stretched over a rounded belly. She was clearly pregnant. Not a little, not just starting. Far enough along that there was no way anyone could pretend it was something new. Rachel felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her mind tried to piece together something reasonable, something that didn't match the scene in front of her. But there was nothing. The fear on Lily's face said everything. She didn't even try to hide it. She stepped back as if she needed space to breathe, and her hands shook slightly as she rested them on her stomach. Before Rachel could form a single question, she heard another sound, the unmistakable voice of Evan calling Lily's name from down the hallway. He sounded casual, unaware, almost comfortable. Then he stepped into view and froze the second he saw Rachel standing at the door. His expression changed instantly. Shock, fear, guilt. All of it passed through his eyes so fast Rachel could see the truth before he said anything. The silence between the three of them felt heavier than anything Rachel had ever carried. She didn't need explanations. She didn't need stories or excuses. The truth was right there in front of her. Lily's pregnancy. The child who called Evan daddy. The shared home. The picture in the living room. All of it pointed to one reality. This wasn't a recent affair or a moment of weakness. This was a life they had built together, one they had managed to hide for years. Rachel's throat tightened so much she couldn't breathe properly. She felt like someone had ripped open her chest. She looked at Lily, then at Evan, waiting for one of them to speak, to try to justify anything. But neither did. Lily looked down at the floor, and Evan finally whispered, "Rachel, I can explain." But even he didn't sound like he believed those words. She realized then that every strange moment, the distance, the canceled plans, the late nights, the nervous behavior, had been warnings she tried to ignore. And now the truth stood in front of her in the clearest, cruelest way possible. Her husband and her best friend had not only betrayed her, but had done it long enough to create an entire hidden family. Rachel stepped back slowly, feeling a pressure in her chest that made each breath painful. She didn't shout or demand answers. She didn't have the strength for that. She just looked at them one last time, seeing two people she no longer recognized, and walked away. The life she thought she had was gone, taken from her in one sudden, breathless moment she would never forget. Rachel didn't sleep the night she discovered the truth. She lay awake in her small guest room at her sister's house, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her marriage. She wanted answers, but she also feared what those answers would do to her. Still, she needed to hear the truth from Evan himself. She needed to know how long her life had been built on lies. The next day, Evan showed up looking exhausted and shaken. He sat across from her, his hands trembling slightly, but Rachel didn't feel sorry for him. She felt empty. When she finally asked him how long it had been going on, he didn't hide behind excuses. He confessed in a quiet, broken voice that it began shortly after their wedding. Rachel felt a sharp pain in her chest. They had barely built a home together when he started tearing it apart behind her back. Evan tried to justify it with words that felt like knives. He said Lily was easier, less demanding, and understood him better. Rachel stared at him, stunned by how casually he said it, as if she had been a burden instead of a wife who trusted him completely. It hurt more than she expected, not because he chose Lily, but because he blamed her for his betrayal. He explained that at first it was just an affair, something he thought would end. But Lily became someone he kept going back to. When she got pregnant with the little boy, everything changed. Evan claimed he panicked and didn't know how to tell Rachel. So he created separate lives instead. One with Rachel that looked stable and loving, and another with Lily that he kept hidden far away from their home. The more he talked, the more Rachel realized how deeply he had planned everything. He described how he split his time, how he made excuses about work trips, late nights, and emergencies. He scheduled holidays, anniversaries, and birthdays around both families so no one would get suspicious. He even admitted that when Rachel thought he was visiting his parents, he was often at the townhouse helping Lily with their son. But the worst part came when he explained the finances. Rachel had always trusted him with the money because he handled bills and budgeting. She worked hard and contributed most of her income, believing it supported their life together. Evan told her that some of that money had been used to support Lily's household, to pay rent, buy furniture, cover medical expenses, and provide childcare. Rachel felt sick. She had unknowingly funded the life he built with her best friend. Hearing all of this, Rachel felt something cold settle inside her. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was years of lies, manipulation, and stolen trust. It was her own money helping raise a child she didn't know existed. Evan kept talking, trying to explain his mistakes, but she no longer cared about the reasons. Every word he said only confirmed how little respect he had for her all these years. She didn't yell or break down. She simply told him to leave. She needed distance from the man who had turned her entire life into a carefully constructed lie. As he walked out the door, Rachel realized that the life she thought she had built with him hadn't just crumbled. It had never truly existed in the first place. Rachel knew she couldn't stay in the house any longer. Every corner reminded her of Evan. Every photo felt like a trap, and every sound seemed to echo the betrayal she had just uncovered. Heartbroken, she packed a few belongings and moved into a small apartment she had found nearby. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, and for the first time in months, she felt a sliver of control over her own life. She spent the first few days in quiet shock, replaying every moment in her head, trying to make sense of what had happened. Her friends and family supported her, but she knew no one could fix what Evan and Lily had done. She needed to protect herself and make sure the years of lies didn't continue to cost her more than they already had. That's when she decided to hire a lawyer, someone who could guide her through the legal maze and help her claim what was rightfully hers. Rachel didn't confront Evan or Lily after moving out. She realized that any emotional outburst would only give them the upper hand and possibly make her look unstable. Instead, she focused on gathering evidence. She began going through bills, statements, and shared accounts. She discovered transfers she hadn't noticed before, payments made to unknown accounts, and purchases that didn't make sense. It became clear how carefully Evan had hidden everything, and Rachel's anger began to grow. Not with loud shouts, but quietly, like a storm building beneath the surface. Every piece of documentation she collected became a tool for her future. She copied emails, saved receipts, and wrote down everything she could remember about conversations, trips, and financial decisions that now seemed suspicious. Rachel stayed calm around Evan whenever she had to see him, never hinting that she knew the full extent of his deception. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her pain or fear. To him, she was moving on quietly, almost gracefully, while inside she was planning the steps that would ensure he paid for every lie. Rachel also began making notes about the timelines, when he claimed to be working late, when he had meetings, and when Lily had supposedly been busy. She realized that with enough evidence, she could prove not only the betrayal, but the financial manipulation that had cost her so much. This realization gave her strength. The heartbreak was still there, but it was now mixed with focus and determination. She knew that revenge didn't have to be loud or dramatic. It could be calculated, measured, and precise. By the end of the week, Rachel felt a small sense of relief. She had taken the first steps to regain control of her life. The apartment was quiet, but it was hers. The lawyer she hired was already reviewing the documents she had collected. And though the storm inside her was growing, it was no longer chaos, it was strategy. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, Rachel felt ready. Ready to face what was coming, ready to rebuild, and ready to make sure that Evan and Lily could never hurt her the way they had before. Rachel felt a mix of relief and determination the day she signed the divorce papers. She wasn't filing just to end her marriage. She was filing to make sure Evan could no longer hide the truth or escape the consequences of his years of lies. With her lawyer guiding her, she carefully laid out everything: the secret accounts, the hidden transfers, and the financial support he had siphoned off to maintain his life with Lily. Every number, every date, every suspicious transaction was documented. Evan tried to act calm when he received the notice, pretending he had no idea what Rachel was talking about. He even reached out to Lily, who played the role of the shocked, innocent friend. But Rachel's lawyer had anticipated this. The documents, combined with screenshots, emails, and bank records, left no room for excuses. It became clear that Lily had been knowingly involved, receiving money and coordinating schedules to hide the second household. When the case reached court, the evidence spoke louder than any argument Evan or Lily could make. Rachel remained composed throughout, showing no anger, only clarity. Her lawyer explained the hidden transfers and detailed how Rachel's finances had been manipulated to maintain another life. The judge listened carefully, and it was evident that Evan had underestimated how thorough Rachel had been. The legal battle didn't stop at the divorce. When Rachel's lawyer discovered that some of the funds Evan had used for the second family came directly from his company accounts, they alerted HR. Evan's employer immediately launched an investigation into potential misuse of company funds. Within weeks, the investigation confirmed what Rachel already knew. Evan had been diverting money to support a household outside of his marriage. The company terminated him, citing gross misconduct. Meanwhile, Lily faced her own consequences. The court ruled that she was responsible for accepting funds she knew were meant to be part of Rachel's household finances. She had to return a portion of the money and was barred from making any false claims about her involvement. Her attempts to appear innocent in public and private communications had failed completely. Rachel watched the entire process quietly. She didn't gloat, didn't brag, and didn't make a scene. She simply let the law do its work. The people who had betrayed her were now facing the tangible results of their actions. She felt a sense of satisfaction, not from revenge, but from justice. Every deceitful text, every secret transfer, every lie Evan had told was now on record and being addressed officially. By the time the case closed, Rachel felt stronger than she had in years. She had regained control over her life and her finances. Evan had lost his job and credibility, Lily had been exposed, and Rachel had reclaimed her dignity. The legal earthquake she had set in motion had leveled the carefully constructed world of lies they had built, leaving her free to start over without fear or betrayal shadowing her future. After the court case, Rachel expected some fallout, but she didn't anticipate the emotional pressure that came next. Lily showed up at her apartment one afternoon, looking worn and desperate. She carried a diaper bag over one shoulder, a fussy toddler in her arms, and another child tugging at her coat. Her eyes were red and her voice trembled as she pleaded. "Rachel, please don't ruin our lives. We're trying to survive. Can't you just forgive us?" Rachel listened quietly. She felt a flash of anger, not at the children, but at the audacity of Lily trying to guilt her. Every word Lily spoke reminded her of the years of lies, the hidden child, the betrayal she had endured. Rachel realized that no matter what she said, Lily had no real remorse, just fear of losing her comfortable position. Then Evan came into the picture. He called, sent messages, and even showed up at her door once, accusing her of being cold and vengeful. He claimed she was punishing them unfairly and acting without compassion. But Rachel saw through it. His words weren't about care or concern. They were attempts to manipulate her, to make her feel guilty for taking control of her life and exposing their deceit. Rachel stayed firm. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she didn't engage in arguments. She calmly explained that she was not trying to destroy anyone. "I'm protecting myself," she said. "I'm making sure I'm safe, financially secure, and no longer lied to. That isn't revenge. That's survival." Her voice didn't shake, and she didn't add extra emotion. It was a simple, clear statement that left no room for manipulation. Lily and Evan tried to twist the story, appealing to her emotions, mentioning the children, the house, the shared memories. But Rachel had already accepted the truth. Her trust had been broken. Her life had been used to cover up a secret, and nothing they said could change what happened. She realized that compassion didn't mean letting herself be hurt over and over. Protecting herself was the only way forward. Rachel also recognized that retaliation didn't have to be loud or aggressive. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. She didn't want to humiliate them publicly or make their lives miserable. The real retaliation was quiet and effective. She had taken control of her life, reclaimed her finances, and ensured that their lies could no longer harm her. As Lily left, holding the children tightly, Rachel felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in years. Evan continued to call, but she ignored most of his attempts, letting his frustration reveal itself without her needing to respond. She realized that the strongest response wasn't anger or shouting. It was living her life on her terms, free from manipulation, guilt, and betrayal. For the first time in years, Rachel felt a clear separation between herself and the people who had hurt her. She had chosen herself, her safety, and her future. That clarity, she knew, was more powerful than any revenge could ever be. Rachel felt a weight lift the day she turned the key to her new apartment. It was smaller than her old home, but it was entirely hers. No lies, no secrets, no reminders of betrayal. She unpacked slowly, placing each item carefully, as if reclaiming a part of herself with every box. The quiet space felt safe, and for the first time in a long time, she could breathe without tension pressing on her chest. The next step was her mental and emotional health. Rachel began seeing a therapist, someone who listened without judgment and helped her untangle the mess of emotions she had been carrying for years. She learned to process her anger, sadness, and disappointment in ways that didn't consume her. Therapy gave her tools to recognize her worth, to trust her instincts again, and to stop blaming herself for the betrayal she had suffered. Rachel also reconnected with her family, who had supported her quietly throughout the ordeal. She spent weekends with her parents, siblings, and nieces, laughing over meals, sharing stories, and rebuilding bonds that had frayed under the stress of her marriage. Family dinners and small trips became anchors in her life, reminders that she was loved and valued, independent of the lies that had surrounded her. At work, Rachel's focus and determination didn't go unnoticed. She had always been capable, but the confidence she gained from reclaiming control of her personal life translated into her professional world. She earned a promotion that came with new responsibilities and a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. Her colleagues respected her, and she finally felt that she was building her future on her own strength, rather than relying on anyone who could betray her. Rachel also allowed herself to enjoy life again. She started traveling to places she had always wanted to see, exploring new cities, hiking trails, and beaches. Each trip became a celebration of freedom, a small declaration that she was no longer bound by the past. She took photos, wrote notes, and created memories that belonged only to her, untainted by deception. Slowly, Rachel began to trust herself again. She listened to her instincts, made decisions without fear, and stopped second-guessing her worth. She realized that her self-respect had become her greatest victory. It wasn't revenge that defined her now. It was resilience, courage, and the knowledge that she could survive anything life threw at her. Even on quiet evenings, when the house was empty and still, Rachel felt a sense of peace. The betrayal that had once consumed her thoughts now felt distant. She had rebuilt her life, not around the people who had hurt her, but around herself. Each choice, each step forward, reminded her that she was capable, strong, and deserving of happiness. For Rachel, rebuilding herself wasn't just recovery. It was triumph. She had turned the darkest period of her life into a foundation for growth, independence, and joy. Every morning she woke up in her new apartment, she remembered that she had survived, and that survival had made her stronger than she had ever imagined. Months after the divorce, Rachel received news that came through a mutual friend. Evan and Lily had broken up. Evan, overwhelmed by the consequences of his lies and the loss of trust from everyone around him, couldn't keep up the double life any longer. Lily, facing the reality of raising 2 children mostly on her own and realizing that Evan had never truly been loyal, decided to end the relationship. Rachel felt a quiet satisfaction, not from gloating, but from knowing that their carefully built secrets had finally crumbled under their own weight. Sitting in her apartment, Rachel reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. The shock of discovery, the heartbreak, the months of legal battles, and the painstaking rebuilding of her life, it all seemed surreal. There were moments when she thought she might never recover, when the pain felt heavier than she could bear. But now, looking back, she saw that each struggle had shaped her, strengthened her, and given her clarity she had never had before. She thought about the lessons she had learned. Trust, she realized, was precious, but self-respect was even more valuable. She had survived deceit from the 2 people she trusted most, yet she had come through without letting anger control her life. Her revenge had not been loud or public. It had not been about punishment or humiliation. Instead, it had been about reclaiming herself, her finances, her freedom, and her dignity. By living her life fully and successfully, she had shown that betrayal could not define her. Rachel also noticed how far she had come emotionally. She could think of Evan and Lily without feeling the raw pain that had consumed her at first. She no longer felt the need to question every decision she had made or to wonder how she could have been so blind. Instead, she felt pride in the way she handled herself. She had acted with intelligence, patience, and calm determination, and the results had spoken for themselves. Even her friends and family noticed the change. They saw Rachel laughing again, enjoying simple moments, traveling, and thriving at work. She had built a life on her own terms, one that was not dependent on anyone who could betray her. This quiet strength became her new identity. She realized that surviving betrayal was not just about escaping the people who hurt her. It was about building a future that no one could touch. Rachel often thought about the words she would tell someone going through the same thing. "They may try to break you, to manipulate you, and to hide their lies," she would say. "But your life is yours to reclaim. Your strength, your happiness, and your dignity are worth more than any revenge you could plan. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well without them." Sitting by her window one evening, Rachel watched the city lights flicker and felt at peace. She had faced deception and betrayal head-on and emerged stronger. Her life was no longer defined by their lies, but by her own choices, her own growth, and her own triumph. That, she knew, was the truest form of victory.